Sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough. And I used to feel like this more in the past than I do today. Because today I realize that this feeling of I'm not good enough comes from my thoughts and the things I've picked up as I've grown up from society, friends, peers, family. So, feeling like I'm not good enough is a thought that I believe. And when I believe that thought, I start looking for evidence. Maybe I feel like I don't know enough. I can't follow my passion. I can't do what I love because I'm just not smart enough. There are all these thoughts and beliefs that we've picked up that bring us down. And when we believe them, we stop ourselves from moving forward. Now, when you feel like you aren't good enough, you have to ask yourself, good enough for what? For whom? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to satisfy someone else's needs? Are you trying to live someone else's life? Or are you trying to live your own life? Do you want to be you or do you want to be someone else? Now the problem is that sometimes we want to be someone else, but that's because we assume that it's better. We look at someone else and we think they've got it figured out when they don't, because no one has figured life out. When you notice this, you realize that you can only be you and you can only live as yourself. So when you feel like you aren't good enough, notice that it's a thought. It's a thought, and like any other thought, it passes as you relax. And when you resist it less, it seems to pass faster. So the thing is that you are good enough. When you try to push yourself to do something you can't do, you end up frustrated, overwhelmed, and anxious. That's when you think that you aren't good enough. But in fact, when you look at reality, the only thing you can do is do your best with what you have, where you are. So in a way, you're always good enough. Even when you feel like you aren't good enough, you're good enough at making yourself feel like you aren't good enough. So just because sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough, let's say I'm working on a new project, that doesn't stop me from moving forward, because I've learned to challenge my assumptions, expectations, and thoughts. So what I do is, let's say I want to write a book, and I feel like I'm not good enough to write this book. So what I'll do is I'll challenge that thought and ask myself, or say to myself, I can try, I can test, I can experiment and see what happens. And I also look at what I'm trying to be. Am I trying to be the expert that knows it all? Or am I just being myself, sharing my story? So when you dive deeper and look at what it is that you're not good enough at, often you see that there's nothing there, because the substance of thought, it's nothing. What's thought made of? Now obviously, when you have a thought and you believe that thought, you have a corresponding emotional reaction. So that's how the human game works. But when you feel like you aren't good enough, know that it's just a part of life. Everyone feels like they aren't good enough at some point in their life. Some feel it more than others, and it's not really a problem unless you resist it and unless you let it hold you back. Now, even if it has held you back in the past, it's not a problem unless you make it a problem, unless you start thinking about it. So if you feel like you aren't good enough, then notice that you can observe that thought without doing anything about it. You can just watch it and let your body react in the way it reacts, and let it be, let it do, let it dance until it doesn't want to dance any longer. And you can challenge the thought. So if you have a thought that says that you aren't good enough to write this book or do what you love, then challenge it. Take the next step, take the next tiniest step and see what happens. Because when I'm doing something I don't think I'm good enough at, even though I know I can do that thing, and when I take tiny steps, eventually I forget about not feeling good enough and I just do what I do in the moment. Because all you have to do is be right here and do what you can. And if you watch my videos, you know I repeat these over and over again because it's true. We trick ourselves with our own stories, the stories in our head. We believe them to be true and we hold ourselves back from living the life we truly want to live. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.